Okay, but let's go ahead and get started. This is a really exciting topic today. Soil microbiology and health. This is the new frontier in agriculture, really. We need to learn how to restore the earth, to restore the soils. Back when I first started out in the hydroponics industry, back then they were fumigating soils with methyl bromide, killing all the microbes in the soil, including the good guys and the bad guys, and destroying the ozone at the same time. We couldn't keep doing that. But now scientists from around the world are harvesting microorganisms from the most fertile soils. They're reproducing them in the labs, then inoculating the roots of plants with plant growth promoting rhizobacteria and mycorrhizal fungi. And it's making a big difference already. This is how we're going to feed the world in the future with limited resources. There was one microbial blend, came out of Michigan State University. It actually won a grand prize from Popular Science magazine for green technology. They were able to just inoculate the roots, use it a few times in the soil. They were able to cut nitrate fertilizers in half. They were able to reduce or eliminate pesticides and fungicides and increase yields at the same time. And just as a bonus prize, they were protecting the environment, because I think farming in general, we've been over-fertilizing. You use nitrate nitrogen, it washes out into the groundwater, into the surface waters. Here in Michigan, we've been using so much phosphorus in agriculture, the soils are saturated. Just add manure to the soil now, heavy rain, it goes into the streams. So this is not sustainable, but by using microorganisms, we unlock the fertilizers in the soil. The microorganisms make plant protection agents. They aid with the uptake of water and minerals. The plants are able to do more chemical reactions. They're able to produce more sugars for energy to fight off diseases, and it increases yield at the same time. So this is a very good topic. For gardeners, we want to just grow the best of the best. We want to get the most from our soils. We want to reduce our inputs. But this has even widespread implications for the future, to be able to feed the world with our limited resources. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Plants and microorganisms have co-evolved on the earth. They're mutually beneficial. The plants do photosynthesis. They harvest the energy of the sun, and they take up water through the roots. They take in carbon dioxide through the leaves. And in the presence of the full spectrum light, they make photosynthase, carbohydrates. Some of those carbohydrates they use for energy to grow and reproduce. Some they store in the flowers and in the fruits. But some they actually leak from the roots to feed the plant growth promoting rhizobacteria. So we might want to think of plants as feeding the microorganisms. And in the same way with organic fertilizers, plants can't take up large organic molecules. So if you're using organic fertilizers, you're feeding the microorganisms, and the microorganisms make digestive enzymes that break down large molecules into small molecules and into ions, mineral ions, that the plants can take up. So plants feed the microorganisms feed the plant. You put the two together in the right combination, you're going to increase quality, increase yield. So this is a new frontier. We'll look at the mycorrhiza. That's the fungi. Myco literally means fungus. Rhiza means roots. So mycorrhizal fungi are fungus that inoculate, that infect the roots. They're beneficial fungi. Infect the roots. They penetrate in between the root cells, and then they send out hyphae, those thread-like filaments that you see here in the pictures. And those spread out in the soil and increase the surface area of the roots by hundreds or even thousands of times. So it increases the uptake of water and nutrients. And the more efficiently plants take up water and nutrients, the more chemical reactions they can do, the higher the Brix. That's the stored sugars that are in the sap. So if the plant's able to utilize the water and minerals more efficiently, it'll make more sugars. So it's going to improve the quality the nutritional quality of food, and the medicinal value of the medicines. And some of the extra are going to be leaked to feed the microbes, so the whole process is sustainable and continues. The main benefit, though, of the mycorrhizal fungi is unlocking phosphorus. Now, phosphorus gets locked up in the soil very easily. It locks up with calcium to make calcium phosphate. That's what your bones are made out of. It's 95% unavailable to the plant. It's insoluble. Phosphorus also locks up with iron, and it precipitates out, then the iron becomes unavailable and the phosphorus. But there are mycorrhizal fungi. They'll make organic acids. They make enzymes that unlock phosphorus from organic matter, that unlock phosphorus from the soil, feed it to the plant. And phosphorus is the energy element. It energizes rooting and it even energizes flowering. So it has a very beneficial effect on the plant. Now, the downside is that it takes about 20 to 30% of the energy of photosynthesis just to feed the mycorrhizal fungi. Now, if there's a phosphorus deficiency in the soil, you have infertile soil, plants will actually exude signal molecules to attract the mycorrhizal fungi. That's how badly they need it. But if there's plenty of water-soluble phosphorus, like in the fertilizers that you're using or in hydroponic fertilizers, plants will treat the mycorrhizal fungi as a pathogen. They actually exude enzymes to repel the mycorrhizal fungi because it's not a good trade anymore. If they need the phosphorus, it's worth the 20 to 30% of their energy. If there's plenty of available phosphorus, why feed the phosphorus and don't get anything in return? It's not a good trade anymore. So nature has found a way to attract or to repel the mycorrhizal fungi. So that's one of the first things you're going to have to decide when you start your indoor garden, or even if you're working outdoors. If you're going to be doing all organics for fertilizer, if you're going to be using rock phosphate, if you're going to use bone meal, then definitely inoculate the roots with the mycorrhizal fungi. Choose the potting soils that have mycorrhiza in it, or inoculate the roots with mycorrhizal fungi, because it's going to be a good trade. It'll help with phosphorus uptake by the plant. But if you're going to use all water-soluble phosphorus, it's 100% water-soluble, the mycorrhizal fungi aren't going to give you as many benefits as they would in soil. So that's your first choice. Okay, now let's look at the plant growth promoting rhizobacteria. So we looked at the fungi, now let's look at the bacteria. The PGPR, the plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, they're the biostimulant factories. They actually make biologically active molecules that aid with the uptake of water and minerals and have other benefits as well. Plants, or the microorganisms like Bacillus subtilis, GBO3, literally make growth hormones. They make rooting hormones right on the surface of the roots. They tell the plant to make more roots. Why would they do that? Because if the plant makes more roots, there's more surface area for the microorganisms to colonize. Because the genetic code in every living organism says the same thing. Be fruitful and multiply. The plant makes more roots, they can multiply, colonize the roots. Also, if the plant makes more roots, it'll take up water and minerals more efficiently and make more sugars. And some of those sugars will be exuded to feed the microorganisms. So it's an evolutionary benefit for microorganisms to actually make growth hormones and rooting hormones on the surface of actively growing and actively dividing roots. Microorganisms also make B vitamins. Now, B vitamins are coenzymes. B vitamin derivatives actually turn on the enzymes for cellular metabolism. Some microorganisms are very good at making those biological molecules, the B vitamins, to stimulate metabolism for themselves and for the surrounding microbes, and also for the plant cells themselves and the root cells. But the B vitamins also have a direct effect on the plant. One dose of B1 at high levels on the roots stimulate what's called the plant's systemic induced response. In other words, it primes the plant. It puts the plant on high alert. So if the plant is under attack, say by a root pathogen, or even by a fungal pathogen at the leaf, the plant's natural immune system responds very quickly to fight off the infection. So that's why a lot of times the gardeners will use B vitamins prior to transplanting, because if you, no matter how careful you are at transplanting, you're going to break some of those microscopic root hairs. If you dose the plant with B vitamins in advance, it will prevent the infection, opening up the plant to infection by microbial pathogens, and protect the plant. But microbes do it without our help. They make B vitamins on the surface of the roots to protect their food source. Microorganisms also make amino acids. They make digestive enzymes called proteases that break down proteins into amino acids. Some of those amino acids are used for carbon and nitrogen. The microbes feed on them as they digest them. It's not just for the plant, but some amino acids are intermediate chelators. Now, chela means claw. A chelate is an organic molecule, like amino acids, that attach or surround a mineral ion like a claw. It holds it tightly enough so it doesn't get locked up or react with other minerals, but loosely enough so it's available to the plant on demand. And there are two amino acids that microorganisms make right on the roots that not only solubilize the minerals, they'll literally activate calcium ion channels in the root cell. So the plant takes up calcium 1,000 times faster than simple osmosis. We'll talk about that a little later, but if the plant takes up more calcium, calcium is the glue that glues the cell walls together. You get thicker stems, thicker cell walls, more resistance, natural resistance to powdery mildew and to molds. Also, the vascular system of the plant is strengthened so it takes up water and minerals more efficiently. As a result, it makes more sugars. It's able to feed the microbes. So if you work with nature, there are positive side effects, many of which we haven't even anticipated. And plant scientists, this is a new frontier for us. We barely understand what's going on in the root zone now. We barely understand the signal molecules. We barely understand how microbes communicate with plants. But we're starting to learn. And as we learn, we can harness the power of nature for our own plants and to be able to protect the environment at the same time. Okay, next, organic acids. Microorganisms actually make Krebs cycle intermediates, organic acids, that make minerals like iron, copper, manganese, zinc, the transition metals. They make them more soluble to the plant. And some microorganisms make a special molecule called a siderophore that literally means iron carrier. It's one of the best chelators of iron in nature. And iron is one of the limiting factors in soil. So microorganisms make the siderophores to make iron available for them, for their own metabolism, but also to make iron available for the plant. It also helps protect the plant, because if the microorganisms, the good guys, are colonizing the roots and they're sequestering the iron, the bad guys aren't going to be able to colonize the roots, the pythium, the rhizoctonia, the root rots. So it acts as a natural plant protection agent against root disease. So it has a combination of things. Well, nature does that. It doesn't just do one thing. It's very efficient at utilizing and recycling natural resources. So if we work with nature, we can achieve those same benefits in our own gardens. Finally, microorganisms, the plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, make volatile organic compounds. They make a bouquet of aromas. Texas Tech just did a recent study on microorganisms. They looked at Bacillus subtilis, GBO3, and they found that those volatile organic compounds could activate up to 600 different genes in the plant, even if the microorganism didn't touch the plant. Those volatile compounds communicated with the plant. It told the plant, take up more iron. It turns off the sugar signal so the plant stays photosynthetically active and continues to manufacture carbohydrates and sugars all the way to the day of harvest. So there's a lot going on in the root zone, and now we're able to harvest the best of the best from nature, put it together in specific blends that we can inoculate the roots of our own crops with, for agriculture and for our gardens, indoors or outdoors. Okay, how do you add the microbes? There's two main ways. Compost tea is a very good way. There's some of you out there are masters at brewing compost teas, and it's a science and an art. One day I want to do a whole class just on compost teas, and I want to do it with some of you that have a lot of experience, that have some secret ingredients from the family, or they've been doing it for so many years that they've found ways to balance the nutrients a little bit better instead of just hoping for the best. But generally speaking, the secret to a high quality compost tea is high quality compost. And you want to use compost from a variety of sources, from the farmyard wastes and from the worm castings, because the farmyard waste compost, they get really hot. So some of the mesophiles that are very good for plants could be killed, especially if you're using the commercial composts. Some of those are made in large windrows, and the center of that compost pile could get over 150 degrees. It'll kill the mesophile. It'll kill some of the actinomycetes. It'll kill some of the trichodermas. And those are some of the superstars of the rhizosphere. But the worm castings don't do that. The worms have a gizzard that grinds up plant material very finely and actually concentrates the microorganisms that are already in the soil. And those microorganisms start to compost and break down the plant material to feed the worm, and then the worm castings are full of microorganisms that didn't get hot because there weren't digestive enzymes and there wasn't a heat produced, massive amounts of heat. So there's a good balance there of microbes. Make sure you use both in your compost teas. So compost teas, you're going to add a great deal of diversity, microbes and nutrients, because they're going to unlock some of the nutrients stored in organic matter. So it is a fertilizer, but it goes beyond the fertilizer value, because as the microorganisms in the compost tea are breaking down the compost, they're making the organic biostimulants that we just talked about that aid with the uptake of the water and nutrients. So even if it's a lower amount of nutrients, they're going to be more available to the plant, especially over time. Now, the only downside to compost tea is it's a limited shelf life. You need to use actively aerated compost tea that has lots of dissolved oxygen. The plant growth promoting rhizobacteria are aerobic. They need oxygen for their metabolism. The bad guys, the root rot, the pythium, the rhizoctonia, those are anaerobic fungi. They grow in stagnant water without oxygen. So if you're using compost teas regularly, they need to be actively aerated. If you took some compost tea and put it in a jug, put it on the shelf for 3 or 4 days, you open that up, it'll smell septic because the anaerobic bacteria and fungi are starting to dominate. And that's not a good thing for the plants as well. So actively aerated compost tea is the secret. Now the other side of the spectrum here, the other column, are the microbial inoculants. And those are specific strains. Instead of adding great diversity from nature, you're picking just the superstars from the rhizosphere. I'm working with one microbiologist out east. He has 1,200 pure strains of plant growth promoting rhizobacteria in his lab. And from those 1,200 different strains, he can pick and choose the microbes with superior characteristics. The best of the best, the superstars of the microbial world. Some of those microbes are better at fixing nitrogen, taking nitrogen out of the air, making nitrogen fertilizer for the plants. Others are better at unlocking phosphorus. Some are excellent at making the growth hormones right on the surface of the roots. Others are better at making plant protection agents. So by choosing the right combination of microorganisms, you can pick the ones that complement one another, that feed and stimulate each other instead of compete with each other. And that is the key to some of the latest developments in microbial inoculants. Also, you can have a guaranteed analysis if you're adding specific strains. And you can see it if you look at the back of the label of a microbial inoculant. It's listed as CFUs, and that stands for colony forming units. That means they have to be alive, obviously, to make and they have to be able to form colonies. That's what CFUs are. Now, not only does it tell you what's there, it tells you what's not there. If you have some poorly produced compost, you could have pathogens in there. There could be root pathogens, and there could even be human pathogens, like E. coli and other food pathogens that are bad for people, make you sick. So if you have a guaranteed analysis, you know that it was made under controlled conditions, that there aren't any pathogens, and that it's loaded with the best of the microbial world. The final thing with the microbial inoculants is now you can create teams. If you're going to do all organics, it can be fungally dominant with the mycorrhizal fungi. You can have more that have the PGPR, the plant growth promoting rhizobacteria. You could have some that are really better at making plant protection agents. So you can make combinations for your specific plants in your specific environment. In fact, now, I'm very excited, we have microbes that have just been released for growth, a grow blend of microbes and a bloom blend of microbes from NPK Industries. The grow microbes, of course, will have more of the phosphorus solubilizers, because the phosphorus energizes the rooting. It's better for the root strike. It unlocks phosphorus in the soil, feeds it to the plant. It's going to have the superstars that are the best of the best at making the rooting hormones on the surface of the roots. And they're going to have other microbes that are very good at making enzymes and amino acids and other molecules that aid with the uptake of nutrients. So you get thicker stems, stronger cell walls, a stronger vascular system, a strong, healthy, vigorous plant. Now the bloom microbes, we're going to add some more microbes. We're going to add some of the fungi that make plant protection agents, that rescue the plant from stress, especially during flowering, that stimulate photosynthesis, and help with the finishing power of the plants. So now there's a combination that's available that's never been available before in that particular blend. So it's very exciting to be part of this new revolution in agriculture, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more and more microbial blends in the future. We're going to be able to discover new strains. We're going to be able to add those. We're going to discover more signal molecules, and we're going to improve the effectiveness. And that will change the world if we do it properly, and we do it in an intelligent way. Okay, oh wow, going too slow here. I'm getting too excited, so I'm going to have to speed this up a little bit. Someone's asking what's the shelf life of compost tea. If you don't aerate it, I'd say 3 or 4 days normally, and then it's going to start to smell bad. If you open it up, it smells like a septic tank. You probably need to either re-aerate it, or you might want to get some fresh. Okay, let's look at the individuals. I only have a few minutes left. Sorry about that, everybody. I'm being a little bit long-winded today. But the phosphorus solubilizing bacteria. Remember, phosphorus gets easily locked up in the soil. The phosphorus solubilizing bacteria make phytase and phosphatase. Those are enzymes. If you see a molecule with an ASC ending, that means it's an enzyme. And these are enzymes that unlock phosphorus from organic matter, unlock it from the soil. Also, the phosphorus solubilizing bacteria are synergistic with the mycorrhizal fungi, so they should be combined in the starter blend. The mycorrhizal fungi, remember, they make those threads that go through the soil. Well, some of the phosphorus solubilizing bacteria hitch a ride on the fungi as the threads are growing through the soil, and then they swim in the soil solution to places that even the mycorrhizal fungi can't reach. They unlock the phosphorus, feed it to the fungi, and then the fungi feeds it to the plant. So if you're going to inoculate with mycorrhizal fungi, include the phosphorus solubilizing bacteria with it. It's going to be more efficient. You're going to have a team instead of just individual microbes. Okay, let's move on. The nitrogen fixing bacteria, they actually take nitrogen from the air and change it into fertilizers right on the surface of the roots, 95% efficient. And also it will sequester some of that nitrogen in their bodies, and they're going to feed nitrogen to the other microbes too, and then the protozoa are going to consume the bacteria. Bacteria rarely die of old age. The protozoa eat them, they use some of the nitrogen for their needs and spit out the extra. And that's nitrogen available for the plant. So you're locking up nitrogen in the root zone and releasing it slowly. When the plant needs it, it'll be healthier growth. Instead of getting big cells with thin cell walls that attract insect, you'll get smaller cells, thicker cell walls, more resistance to pests and disease. Okay, growth hormones. Some microbes are really good at making auxins. Those are the rooting hormones. Others are better at making cytokinins that stimulate cell division. So you get the right team, the right combination, you're going to stimulate more lateral root growth and more root mass. Digestive enzymes. Plants make digest proteins, break it into smaller molecules. They break down carbohydrates as well. The proteins are broken down by digestive enzymes called protease. It's an enzyme that breaks down proteins into amino acids. And the amino acids provide nitrogen for the microbes, so they're feeding each other. They're actually making nitrogen food for the other microorganisms that break down the carbohydrates. So they're feeding each other while they're feeding the plant. Also, the amino acids aid with the uptake of calcium, and as you know, that's going to strengthen the plant. You're going to prevent or reduce the incidence of powdery mildew, and you're going to improve the nutritional value of food in general. The carbohydrates, some microorganisms make an enzyme called cellulase. ASE again, they break down cellulose into simple sugars. So they're taking some of the dead plant material and dead roots, breaking it down and refeeding it, feeding it to the microbes and feeding it to the plant as simple sugars. They provide carbohydrates for the microbes for fuel, and in the process, the microorganisms make Krebs cycle intermediates. Those are organic acids that solubilize iron, copper, manganese, zinc, and make it easier for the plant to take them up. And those trace elements are critically important because they activate enzymes. Enzymes in the microbes, enzymes in the enzymes, they activate the enzymes that the microbes produce, the digestive enzymes, and they activate enzymes inside the plant. Enzymes that activate plant protection agents, enzymes that are involved in photosynthesis in the electron transport chain. So you're going to improve the nutritional value of food. Also, it's critical that the right amount, optimal amounts of iron are available for the plant, because that iron not only makes enzymes that activate enzymes for plant protection agents against stress, they also activate enzymes that make medicinal compounds for medicinal herbs. I only have a couple more minutes left, so I'm kind of rushing here. Might be stumbling a little bit. But take a breath. The main thing that we're trying to do, and this is a common theme in all the classes, increase Brix. That's the sugar content in the sap. Low, medium, and high Brix plants equate to low, medium, and high quality plants. The highest quality, the best of the best, will have high Brix. If you can grow such healthy plants that the Brix is at 12% or higher, sucking insects won't even recognize the plant as food. And microorganisms are part of that process. Some of them increase the photosynthesis process itself. They make the volatile organic compounds that upregulate iron. The plant takes up more iron, by the way. Iron is a catalyst for chlorophyll production, the green pigment. So the plant will harvest more of the light energy and make more sugars. Also, some of those volatile compounds turn off the sugar signal in the plant. Toward the end of flowering, plants, if they have plenty of carbohydrates stored up, they start to shut down. They stop doing photosynthesis. But if the sugar signal is turned off by the microorganism, the plant doesn't know it has enough sugars. It'll continue to do photosynthesis. It'll continue to accumulate carbohydrates all the way to the day of harvest. And that will improve the entire flowering process. Okay, last but not least, stress protection. Plants, when they're under stress, heat stress, drought stress, salt stress, UV stress, they start to produce ethylene gas. And ethylene downregulates shoot and root production. And in nature, it's a good thing, because why should the plant try to use its energy to grow if it's under stress? So it wants to stall and go into shock until the stress passes. But some microorganisms literally have been evolved to make an enzyme, ACC deaminase, that breaks down that precursor molecule for ethylene. So you're literally releasing the plant from stress and rescuing normal root growth. Now, just to summarize here in the next couple minutes, generally speaking now, the polymicrobial blends work better and more efficiently than single strains. We want to have a combination of microbes that complement one another, that feed each other while they're feeding the plant, instead of competing with each other and killing each other. So it's very important to get a combination of plant growth promoting strains with the disease suppressive strains. I'll give you an example. Pseudomonas fluorescens. That is harvested from some of the disease suppressive soils. But if you use it all by itself, yeah, you'll stimulate the systemic acquired resistance of the plant and activate the immune system, but the plant will divert some of its primary metabolites to make plant protection agents. And you could lose more in yield than you would have lost from the disease itself. So we want to do a combination. We don't want just to stimulate disease suppression. We want to stimulate growth while we're stimulating disease suppression till we get the best of both worlds. And we can do that now. Scientists it took them 30 years in the microbiology labs, but they're able to get the right combinations to do both. Stimulate yield while stimulating disease suppression. You also want to use microbe-friendly supplements. It's a good idea to stimulate the metabolism of the microorganisms so we can feed them amino acids. It's a nitrogen source, it's a carbon source for them. We can feed them things like humic and fulvic acids that are loaded with trace elements, seaweed extracts that are loaded with 62 beneficial trace elements from the sea that stimulate the metabolism of the microorganisms while they're also improving the uptake and turning on enzymes in the plant. Also simple sugars to be used toward the end. Toward the end of flowering, plants want to hoard their sugars. They want to store them in the flowers and in the fruit for the next generation. And they stop leaking carbohydrates to feed the microbes. So that's one thing we can do to improve on nature. When the plant stops feeding the microbes, we can make a blend, maybe amino acids with some carbohydrates, maybe some cane molasses, feed the microbes so that they continue to grow and continue to make the volatile organic compounds so the plant will continue to make carbohydrates and bulk up all the way to the day of harvest. Okay, and finally, if we do this properly, using some of the new technologies, do it intelligently, we can reduce fertilizer inputs. We can cut nitrogen fertilizers in half. We can unlock phosphorus that's already saturated in the soil and feed it to the plants. We can protect the environment. We can reduce or eliminate pesticides and fungicides. If the plant's taking up more calcium with help of the microbes, you're going to get more calcium pectate. It's going to protect the plant against fungus. The plant's natural resistance to pests and disease will increase quality and increase yield, improve the nutritional value of food, the medicinal value of medicines. Some of those microbial blends that are coming out of the universities now, the more they cut down the fertilizers, the higher the yields they got. Some of the tests they did at Michigan State University, they were getting 4 times the yield of tomato plants that were inoculated with beneficial microorganisms. So it's not just reducing fertilizers, it's increasing quality and yield at the same time. And by the way, we're protecting the environment from runoff. We're protecting our groundwaters. We're restoring the soil so that we're going to be able to feed more people in the future with limited resources. We can't keep doing what we're doing in agriculture. If we overdo it with nitrate nitrogen in agriculture, you get big cells thin cell walls, it actually attracts insects. You get a good rain, nitrate, nitrogen, those synthetic fertilizers are so water soluble, they're washed away from the root zone. So they become unavailable to the plant and they're lost into the groundwater. I know there's some areas in Germany that there's so much nitrate runoff from the fertilizers that it's contaminated the groundwater, polluted it. They're getting blue baby syndrome. And that's where a lot of the biostimulants came from. It was from Germany. They got some of the best minds in Germany to try to solve the pollution problem. It started out as an environmental issue. And they found, though, that the soil had plenty of nutrients, but it was locked up and unavailable to the plant. So they started developing biostimulants to unlock the nutrients to feed the plant. Now, so they could use less fertilizer to protect the environment. But as a result, though, they found additional benefits for quality and yield. That led to some of the root stimulants, some of the growth stimulants, and even bloom stimulants. I saw trials in Belgium, they were increasing yields by 10 to 20% using a very small amount of organic biostimulants that were extracts from microorganisms that were harvested from the soil and grown in bioreactors.